Russia-Ukraine war latest news. Peace talks in the Levant, Ukraine, are silly. Richard Holbrooke, who mediated the 1995 Dayton Accords that ended the Bosnian War, said warring parties will only reach a peace accord when they are exhausted and want one. In summary, timing matters. Unfortunately, Holbrooke's reign encroaches on the Ukraine and Levant battles first, the Middle East, and kudos to U.S. Secretary of State Antony Blinken for his tireless efforts to mediate a ceasefire between Netanyahu and Sinwar. Blinken's trips to Israel and regional meetings have been exercises in optimism over experience and jet lag endurance. His efforts to hush war's guns have failed except for a temporary truce last November, highlighting the crisis's complexity and breadth. After this weekend's enormous Israeli airstrikes on southern Lebanon and Hezbollah's drone and missile attack on Israel, peace prospects are significantly worse. In recent months, Blinken and his boss, U.S. President Joe Biden, have touted a plan that would release the last Israeli hostages in Gaza and evacuate Israeli forces from the coastal region they've destroyed to defeat Hamas. "My national security advisor tells me that we're near, close but not done yet," Biden told reporters in February. But deals are usually close. Ultimately, it's impossible. U.S. officials said a hostages for ceasefire deal was close before last week's Democratic convention. After 2 days of negotiations, Israeli, U.S., Qatari, and Egyptian mediators released a draft bridging proposal to address the remaining gaps between Israel and Hamas in the way that allows for a quick implementation of the deal. A few hours later, Blinken was in Tel Aviv, and Netanyahu released a one-sentence statement vowing commitment to the existing American proposal after 3 hours of conversation. Now Sinwar had to consent. However, the Levant shows no indications of tiredness or want, Holbrooke's preconditions. There's too much to make both essential players stubborn. So far, Israel and Hamas have focused on petty issues like who would control the Philadelphia corridor along the Gaza-Egypt border, or how many Israeli captives Hamas would free in exchange for more Palestinians jailed in Israel during the first 6 weeks of a two-step ceasefire. These all overlook the big picture. Yes, details may be devilish. The contrasts in this situation stem from the basic dilemma a frustrated Blinken has faced for months. Hamas remains steadfast in its demand for a lasting ceasefire. Netanyahu has shown little willingness to compromise on his goal of destroying Hamas before establishing a durable ceasefire, whether that's realistic or not. Both Netanyahu and Sinwar face political and existential threats to their survival. Former Mossad intelligence officer David Maidan told Politico months ago, Netanyahu wants to stay in power, but if he quits his long-held skepticism of a two-state solution, or if he signs up to anything more than a quick ceasefire, his coalition government will fall. Former Israeli intelligence officer Yaakov Perry says Sinwar shouldn't agree to anything. Giving up the captives would be writing his own death certificate. Bibi and Sinwar are both self-centered, he observed. Let's turn to Ukraine, where some Western allies have again spoken of the need for negotiations after months of Ukrainian setbacks in Donetsk as Russian forces have pushed on despite high combat casualties. Since Ukraine's surprise cross-border invasion into Russia's Kursk region earlier this month, which caught Putin and his generals off guard, such discussion has cooled. The incursion's goal was to inspire jaded allies and exhausted Ukrainians by showing them a way to win. On Saturday, Ukraine's Independence Day, President Volodymyr Zelensky stressed that Ukrainian forces would soon be able to attack any point of the Russian Federation that's a source of danger, music to allies like Britain, where ministers have been talking up Kursk, enfeebling Putin and possibly bringing him down. Even though that's probably a highly optimistic assessment, such opinions and the assault have helped Zelensky calm Western nerves and remove fears of no endgame. To further reassure friends, Zelensky and his advisors have discussed Kursk igniting negotiations, claiming the attack strengthens Kyiv's peace talks. After the cross-border assault, Ukrainian presidential advisor Mikhailo Podolyak, among others, posted on X, "In the Kursk region, we can clearly see how the military tool is being used objectively to persuade Russia to enter a fair negotiation process." Has Ukraine taken this seriously? Because, like the Levant, the broader picture suggests otherwise. Putin will likely hold Crimea and the 4 oblasts he now claims as Russian territory. Zelensky and his top aides refuse to give up territory for peace. Putin's life may be at jeopardy as he seeks political survival and a legacy. I've gotten a lot of phone calls here asking me about why Zelensky and Yermak are talking about peace and the Russians may be going to the next peace summit, said a U.S. consultant to Ukrainian officials. I tell them it's a reflection of two things. First, they don't want to seem unreasonable to Trump world, said the consultant, who requested anonymity. Second, maybe more importantly, public opinion polls in Ukraine show that society has changed. I know Zelensky won't make any real concessions, he'd rather walk away. He doesn't want to give up territory in Ukrainian history. He must acknowledge this change in Ukrainian society, at least implicitly. He must show Ukrainian society that he is willing to talk, he said. Once again, fatigue and want, the two essential conditions for effective peace talks, appear to be absent in Kiev as in the Levant. It appears all this bargaining stuff is for the birds.